Okay, so now this video we're going to talk a little bit about composition. Composition is a very broad subject and it's really open to interpretation by the viewer and by the artists themselves. But there are some basic and fundamental rules to take a look at and get familiar with, and then break the hell out of them in order to make your shots your own. And we're going to start with looking at the rule of thirds. So basically, with the rule of thirds, you divide the image or the frame into thirds, both vertically and horizontally. And by placing your subject or certain aspects of your image on these axes, you can really enhance the whole viewing experience of the image, the impact of the image. But the best way to explain this is to show you through examples. So when you have your subject in the frame, you will want to keep your subject either on this third axis or on that third axis. And how you choose that is dependent upon where the subject is looking. So for example, you don't want to have your subject looking towards the edge of the frame. You want them to be looking to the wider area of the frame. This creates a sense of space and gives a little bit more interest in the image because you're wondering, what is the subject looking at? Much like I'm framed in this video now, if I was simply to turn myself and face to this way while talking to you, it would feel very condensed, very small. It feels very claustrophobic almost. But by turning and facing this way, I open myself up and also you to what is here in this empty space. And it creates a more pleasing image. Another example of how to use this is with landscape photography. One thing that is considered a mistake with landscape photography is when the horizon is placed dead in the center of the frame. A lot of people believe that you should keep your horizon at the top of the frame or the bottom of the frame, and it creates a much more pleasing image when you do this. It's not always the case, but in most cases it does look a lot better. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few examples and have the subject both center framed and then placed out into one of the three axes of this grid, and just show you the difference in impact that it does make. It's subtle in some cases, but it does create a difference. Another place where you can really use the rule of thirds is when you're framing a close-up of someone's face. In general, you would want to keep their eye line in the top frame, in the top 1/3 of the image. Even if they're centered in the frame, you still want to have that top 1/3 across the eye line. It just creates a much more dramatic image. It allows your viewer to really focus in on the eyes. Okay, so there are no real hard and fast rules when it comes to composition, in my personal opinion. I think that we can all find images that are pleasing to us, and that's really the essence of photography. So when it comes to working on your composition, one thing that's good to know is these fundamental rules, like the rule of third, but also to go out there and just try a bunch of different frames within the same shot. I've often seen photographers shooting frame after frame without really moving or adjusting their camera, just slightly changing settings. To me, this is such a waste of time. When you feel like you've captured an image in a certain frame, adjust your frame. You can still shoot the same image, but just change the way you're composing that shot. Shoot a whole bunch of different compositions, and then when you get back into the computer, you can find the ones that you really like and figure out what it is about that image that really stands out to you. What did you change when you recomposed that image that made it better than the last composition? Work on creating your own style, because composition is key. This is just a basic run over of composition. In later tutorials, I'll be talking with more advanced, specific lessons based on a certain type of photography. We're going to delve into landscape photography and really look at composition and how it affects landscape photography. We're going to look at portraiture and really focus on how you can compose your photos for portrait photography to create an image, to create a feeling. Another thing to consider when composing shots is negative space. You see this a lot in portrait photography. Negative space essentially is the area that has no real point of focus in it, your subject is not using. A lot of times you'll see people framing shots where there's a lot of headroom above the subject. To give you an example, I'll just crouch down for a moment. It creates a sense of someone being quite small and not very important in the frame. It also detracts from the user so that your eyes are not pulled to focus on that subject. Whereas when you have the frame cutting more across the head here like this, you create a sense of it being full and impactful frame. What you're seeing in the frame is more important and needs to have your attention, have the viewer's focus. With composition as well, it comes down to more than just how the image is framed, but also how the camera is positioned. By shooting from a low angle, you can create a sense of power or authority within your subject. Shooting from a high angle can have the adverse effect of creating someone that feels small or diminished. By simply changing the angle or the height of your camera, you can really create a different experience for the viewer. By bringing the camera down to a very low level, you're showing people a scene that they may be seeing on a daily basis, but from an angle that they maybe haven't looked at before. And also taking the camera much higher, turning the camera slightly on its axis. These are all different techniques you can use to take something that we see on a day-to-day basis and compose it in a way that is unusual, interesting, or different. And that creates impact. When it comes to composition, be creative. Find out what looks good. Play around. Enjoy yourself. And most importantly, happy shooting.